we're going to unpack a massive, centuries-old mystery about how the human brain actually learns and compare that to modern artificial intelligence. It's a story packed with epic rivalries, some of history's most brilliant minds, and a modern plot twist that is just absolutely fascinating to watch unfold. We're essentially looking at the very foundation of intelligence itself.
So, does ChatGPT actually think like you do? You know, what's really wild about this question is that the tools we're texting, prompting, and collaborating with literally every single day, they're actually forcing us to answer a 400-year-old philosophical debate about what makes us human. Are these machines actually mirroring our own minds, or are they doing something entirely different? To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this mystery, take a look at this mind-bending claim from Dr. David King's recent research at the University of Glasgow. He points out that large language models, or LLMs, ingest data that is orders of magnitude higher than what a human child requires to learn a language. It's a crazy detail, and it perfectly sets the stage for a much deeper dive into the actual architecture of thought. Let's jump back to the 17th century for the original heavyweight philosophical bout to see the core conflict here. On one side, you have John Locke pushing strict empiricism. He argued the mind is a tabula rasa, basically a completely blank slate, built entirely by sensory experience from the outside world. But opposing him, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz argued our minds are actually more like veined marble, so pre-programmed with fissures that naturally shape how we process the world, almost like a block of stone that's already predisposed to be carved into a specific statue of Hercules. Leibniz was all about this concept of innate ideas. Basically, he argued that universal truths, things like logic, mathematics, and morality, they have to be built right into our cognitive architecture from birth. Why? Well, because sensory experience alone only gives us very specific, contingent facts. It literally can't give us universal necessity. So we must have some sort of internal, innate software ready to process the world the second we're born. Fast forward to the 1950s. The battlefield shifts from abstract philosophy over to the emerging fields of linguistics and psychology. And the clash is huge. On the empiricist side, you've got B.F. Skinner arguing through behaviorism that language is really just a learned behavioral response, driven by environmental reinforcement. But then, Noam Chomsky steps into the ring. He brings this fierce rationalist approach that would eventually spark the entire cognitive revolution. And Chomsky really delivered a knockout blow to behaviorism here. He introduced concepts like generative grammar and argued there's a deep structure to language that we're mostly unconscious of. But his most devastating point, the poverty of the stimulus. Chomsky pointed out that kids learn language way too fast and from incredibly limited, messy environments to just be blank slates. There's no way. They must have some innate biological language faculty, those veins in the marble, to be able to learn so efficiently.
Leaping back to today, we've got a massive new player in the ring, artificial intelligence. So we have to ask, does the crazy, data-driven architecture of modern AI finally prove the empiricists were right all along? Well, the cognitive science community is completely split on this. Some people argue AI success is a huge victory for Locke's empiricism, mainly because models like ChatGPT learn entirely through exposure to just oceans of data. But others say, no, it's actually a win for rationalism because engineers literally have to build substantial innate biases and highly specific architectures into these models just to get them to work at all.
And just to make things even more complicated, philosopher W.V.O. Quine pointed out this concept of externalized empiricism. He noted that empiricists actually don't have a problem with innate architecture as long as it can be determined experimentally. So what that means is the mere existence of AI programming doesn't automatically declare rationalism the winner. The whole debate just remains completely gridlocked. Brace yourselves because Dr. David King's recent research drops a massive twist that flips this entire 400-year-old debate right on its head. Looking at his thesis, he reveals something pretty startling. He argues that using large language models to somehow solve the debate between human empiricism and rationalism is actually a massive category error. Why? Well, because the two systems are fundamentally entirely different beasts. Just look at how stark this contrast is. Humans learn incredibly efficiently from minimal data, right? That's Chomsky's poverty of stimulus. LLMs, on the other hand, require a mind-boggling richness of stimulus, like they need the whole internet. Plus, humans are sensorially grounded in the physical real world. LLMs, they only group tokens and statistics. They aren't learning the way we do, they're relying on entirely different underlying competencies. Because of these massive differences, we have to face a pretty wild reality. We haven't recreated human cognition in our server farms. We've engineered an entirely alien mind.
As the research highlights, human language is deeply physical. Long before a kid even grasps basic syntax, they're making ontological distinctions based on a responsive physical relationship to the real world. A child learns what water is by drinking it, feeling it, kneading it. That physical sensory grounding is completely and utterly absent from LLMs.
And honestly, this perfectly explains one of the most frustrating things about modern AI: hallucinations. Because AI lacks that physical grounding, it doesn't actually know what it's talking about. It represents meaning purely at the token level. It's essentially playing a highly advanced game of statistical word prediction. It's optimizing to give you a fluent, coherent-sounding sentence, regardless of whether it actually aligns with real-world factual reality.
So ultimately, Dr. King concludes that while AI is an absolutely incredible engineering feat, and it's largely irrelevant to understanding whether the human mind is rationalist or empiricist. If engineers actually want to build true artificial general intelligence, or AGI, he suggests they need to model it strictly on human cognitive science, rather than getting bogged down trying to solve these arcane philosophical debates. So I'm going to leave you with this one final provocative thought. We've spent 400 years trying to figure out how our own minds work. Now, as we push closer and closer to artificial general intelligence, using methods that are totally, fundamentally alien to our own brains, what kind of intelligence are we actually unleashing on the world? It's a fascinating question, and for sure, it's one we are all going to have to answer together.